This is the book Muscle and a Shovel by Michael Shank, Chapter 29, Killing the One-Man Pastoral System. Good morning, Randall. I had brought the coffee and donuts for the morning. Hey, Mr. Mike, Randall replied. Then he hollered when he saw the donuts. You know the weight of my heart, and it is definitely through my stomach. Randall laughed large at his own jokes. Listen, Randall, I know you probably wanted to talk about some specific subject this morning, but could we push that subject to tomorrow? How come? I've got something else I'd like to ask you about, I confess. No problem. What would you like to talk about? What you said as I was leaving the office yesterday. The Church of Christ doesn't call their preachers pastor. What's with that? Randall opened his Bible. The term pastor comes from the Greek word poimen or poimeno, and it means shepherd. The New Testament also calls them bishops and overseers. Pastor, shepherd, bishop, overseer, and elder all refer to the same office in the same person. Our English word for pastor, which comes from those Greek words poimen or poimeno, is found only one time in the New Testament. Let's turn to Ephesians chapter 4, verse 11. Randall and I opened our Bibles to the chapter and verse. Mr. Mike, would you read it for us, he asked. I read. And he gave some apostles, and some prophets, and some evangelists, and some pastors and teachers. First, Randall began, an evangelist is a herald, a proclaimer of the gospel to the lost. Notice that evangelists and pastors are two separate offices. They're not one and the same as people are led to believe in denominational churches. Second, a one-man pastoral or shepherd system is completely unscriptural, and it sets the framework for the abuse of power, corruption, and leading away entire groups of believers. I cut in. You mentioned during our study Tuesday that each congregation of the Church of Christ was independent of the rest and self-governed by pastors or elders. So the preacher doesn't make the decisions? Is that what you said? I asked, trying to remember our previous conversation. Yeah, that's right, replied Randall. So the preacher is not the pastor, I asked. No, Mr. Mike. The New Testament reveals that the evangelist and the pastor are not the same man. And there was always more than one pastor at each congregation in the Bible, I questioned. Absolutely. Just as Paul and the apostles commanded, he answered. Could you show me where this is found in the Bible? I wanted to see it for myself. Certainly, Mr. Mike. Randall began searching for his first verse. But you may want to write the references down because we're going to look at several on this topic. I grabbed an ink pen and took notes. He took me to the following verses. Acts chapter 11, verse 30. Acts 14, verse 23. Acts 15, 2, 4, 6, 22, and 23. Acts chapter 16, verse 4. Acts 20, verses 17 and 18. Titus chapter 1, verse 5. James chapter 5, verse 14. 1 Peter 5, verses 1 and 5. In these passages, the Bible reveals that elders or pastors governed each congregation. There were always a plural number of elders, never just one. A pastor was the same thing as an elder, and a pastor was not the evangelist. Randall, why do the majority of denominations use the one-man pastor system today? Why do they reject the commands and examples in the New Testament that clearly show how churches are to be governed by a group of qualified pastors or elders instead of the preacher? Mike, it seems to be another holdover from Catholicism. The philosophy of one man ruling the church originated in the office of the Catholic priest and ultimately the Pope, Randall explained. And there's another big problem with the system. What's that, I asked. The one system puts a separation between the preacher and the members, and that's a dangerous partition. How's that, I asked. It creates a separate class of people within the church, clergy and laity. It exalts the preacher and puts him up on a pedestal. You won't find clergy and laity in the Bible. The apostles didn't do that with each other, and they didn't tolerate others exalting them either. A good example of this is found in Acts chapter 10, verses 25 to 26. And as Peter was coming in, Cornelius met him and fell down at his feet and worshipped him. And Peter took him up, saying, "Stand up. I myself also am a man." When Cornelius fell at Peter's feet to worship him, Peter told him to get up because he was just a man. Mr. Mike, be honest. Didn't you see your Baptist pastor as being up on a pedestal, maybe a little higher than everyone else? Sure I did, I answered truthfully. The pastor was held up as the man who was closer to God than everyone else. He was separate from the rest. He was somebody who had a greater spiritual connection to God. He seemed to have a better understanding of the Bible than anyone else in the church. All right, Randall responded. If Peter was an apostle and he didn't allow people to put him on a pedestal, why in the world would today's preachers want to be up on a pedestal? It was a good question. They shouldn't let that happen, Randall, I answered. That's the point, my friend. In truth, preachers are only a speaking member of a congregation. Preachers have absolutely no authority to govern a local congregation. Authority to govern the church is given only to the elders, and only when there's more than one qualified elder at a congregation of the Lord's people. Furthermore, every true Christian is a member of the royal priesthood, 1 Peter 2, verse 9. Every Christian is a minister or a servant of Christ. We're all required to take the gospel to every creature. Third, many denominational pastors are not qualified to hold the office of a true Bible pastor or elder. Qualifications? How are they supposed to be qualified, I asked. Randall turned to 1 Timothy 3, verses 1 through 7, and said, "We've talked about this a little more in some of our previous talks, but remember that pastor, shepherd, bishop, overseer, and elder all refer to the same office. Paul told Timothy in 1 Timothy 3, 1 to 7, if a man desire the office of a bishop, elder, pastor, shepherd, overseer, he desireth a good work. A bishop then must be blameless, the husband of one wife, vigilant, sober of good behavior, given to hospitality, apt to teach, not given to wine, no striker, not greedy of filthy lucre, but patient, not a brawler, not covetous, one that ruleth well his own house, having his children in subjection with all gravity. For if a man know not how to rule his own house, how shall he take care of the church of God? Not a novice, lest being lifted up with pride, he fall into the condemnation of the devil. Moreover, he must have a good report of them which are without, lest he fall into reproach and the snare of the devil." Mr. Mike, how many denominational preachers today are divorced and remarried? How many actually have a plurality of believing children who are in subjection with all gravity? I just shook my head. I knew a few denominational pastors who did not meet the qualifications found in these passages of text. You know what amazes me, Mr. Mike, asked Randall. What's that? I responded. That so many good, highly intelligent people with good sense entrust their spiritual future into the hands of a single man. That amazes me. And to think that one man has that kind of power over a group. He can make decisions that might plunge entire groups of people into deeper spiritual blindness. Yes, the one-man pastoral system was a model foreign to the Word of God. It was a system open to corruption, abuse of power, and human exaltation. I had seen it firsthand. Randall and I shook hands and departed one another's company to go about our day's duties. It was official. I had information constipation. This has been chapter 29 of the book Muscle and a Shovel by Michael Shank. We appreciate your time today and hope this has been encouraging to you. Have a great day. God bless.